Hi everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. It's coming up on 20 minutes of 1 o'clock here Eastern Time as we have seen our storm getting underway. We're still early in the game here. The magic time really is about 3 p.m. because that is the point where the sun angle starts to play a diminishing role, and certainly as you start to get to 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock, you're going to see snow accumulate on all surfaces. And actually, and I've been somewhat surprised by this, getting reports in and around New York City, which in the last 2 storms were basically shut out of all the big snows because of that warmer heat island effect. But it was snowing hard up until a little while ago over many areas of New York City and just nearby. So those urban areas saw accumulating snows on streets in Midtown Manhattan, which kind of surprised me. It figures the one time I was talking about the fact that this urban effect was probably going to repeat itself again, and sure enough, this may be the one time that it doesn't. But the bulk of this snowfall is going to be from 3 p.m. to about 3 or 4 a.m. and that is particularly for Long Island, New York City, northeastern New Jersey, coastal New Jersey, and the areas in the southern areas of the lower Hudson Valley. The further north and west you go, we've been discussing the fact for the last number of days about the sharp cutoff that was going to exist, and that still is going to be the case. So there is going to come a point as you go north and west of the coast where this thing is going to cut off sharply. Where that cutoff line is anyone's guess at this point. Maybe it's Route 84, maybe it's just north of Route 84. That would probably be the best way to describe it. Meanwhile, through central and South Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania, it has been snowing heavily all morning into early afternoon. There are some areas in southeastern Pennsylvania that already have a half foot of snow, and those areas, by the way, also got some snow and ice yesterday with the first lead low that has moved up. So let's take a look at what's happening right now with respect to the radar. And if you are watching from, say, Long Island and to just east of New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, and on eastward, you can see where the concentration of the echoes are. Central and South Jersey, most of eastern Pennsylvania, back into south central Pennsylvania, some places getting hit very hard. Also, snowing very heavily at times in the Washington, D.C., Baltimore corridor. They have been reporting moderate to heavy snow for the last 4 or 5 hours there. So right now, it's west and south as the low center is developing off the Delaware coast. What's going to happen is that this is going to start, as the low begins to pivot to the east, the area that's to the west will shift to the coast, and this is going to happen for later this afternoon and for the overnight. So when that happens, this is where Long Island, southern Connecticut, back to New York City, northeastern New Jersey, coastal New Jersey will be getting their accumulating snow, and it will coincide with the disappearing sun and the setting sun, and the fact that it's going to fall at night. That snow is going to stick just about everywhere. So it's a fairly impressive radar, and the surface observations that I looked at in South Jersey, Millville, Mount Holly, Trenton, back up into southeastern Pennsylvania, Pottstown, Lancaster, in and around Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, on up to about Allentown, and then extending even further west than that, reporting either moderate or heavy snow, with snow coming down at rates of about 1 to 2 inches an hour. So you know what, everything is really pretty much on course. We try and describe how the storm is going to play out. It's very hard to pinpoint it, exactly correct, but we do the best we can. And here's my snowfall map that I updated last night. I made no changes today. The 8 to 12, general 8 to 12, and that 12-inch plus for southeastern PA. I may, depending on how things work this evening, this 8 to 12 line may wind up getting extended to all of Long. I happen to think that all of Long Island will wind up with 8 to 12, and that the city we'll probably wind up with 8 to 12, maybe a little bit lower along the coastal counties of New Jersey as you get closer to the shore. I have a 6 to 8 indicated there. North and west, it starts to cut off sharply. So I don't, this is the part that I think I'm having the toughest time with. The northern cutoffs are always difficult in storms like this when they're coming up from the south. When they're coming up from the south and then pulling out to the east. So this is where the amounts could come more on the low side of the forecast than on the high side. We'll go to the satellite and the surface map that's overlaid on it, so you can see what's happening. And here's our storm. It's the satellite signature with the enhanced clouds. You see that hook back to the coast. The upper low is developing and moving southeast, and that's the other thing the coastal areas are waiting for. You have to wait for that upper low to swing toward the coastline, and that will pivot that heavy snow area eastward during the late afternoon and evening. Low pressure developing off the Delaware coast. You can see it here. It's very complex. A number of different low centers being picked out here on the surface analysis, because eventually it'll consolidate or try to consolidate into one low. But this goes back to the problem that we described over the last 4 or 5 days, in that we've had so many moving pieces here, so many short waves, and how they were going to come together. That has been really the big issue. On we go to the weather model. So let's take a look at what the HRRR is doing. That model, by the way, it on the whole has not performed well. However, in the Noreasters, it actually has performed rather well. So that is something that we're going to pay attention to, since it has been doing well. We're going to give it the benefit of the doubt here and use that as a guide to what may happen here. Before we do that, I just came into mind, let me put the NAM3 up, the NAM3 kilometer, and I'm going to put up its simulated version of what the radar and satellite are supposed to look like. This is pretty useful, I think, and this is for 1 o'clock this afternoon on the 3K, and the radar matches up pretty well. We're coming up to 1 o'clock, so you know what? I can actually, let me bring back that radar shot. We'll bring it. Let me get that radar shot. What did I do with it? There we go. So here's the radar shot. And here is the 3K. And this is for 1 o'clock. This is the actual radar at 1 o'clock. It's pretty close, folks, and you can see where the bulk of that heavy snow in the blue is showing up back through eastern Pennsylvania, down through New Jersey, into Maryland, Delaware, and northeastern Virginia. So the model, at least for a 6-hour forecast, has done pretty well. So, but let me go forward so you can see what happens during the late afternoon and in the overnight. And there you see how the echoes from the ocean are pivoting northwestward, and then the area back in Pennsylvania starts to move southeast as that upper low gets completely involved here. And then by the time we get to 9 p.m., this is all probably at the very least moderate to heavy snow from southern New England over Long Island, over New Jersey, and then it starts to slowly pivot out to the east. But you can see it snows all night. We're at 3 a.m. and it's still snowing in all of New Jersey, and snowing particularly hard over Long Island and southern Connecticut. And even by 7 a.m. on Thursday, the back edge of the snow is to about New York City, still coming down over Long Island and in through New England and on up through the Boston area into Massachusetts and New Hampshire. I think this is probably a fairly fair representation of how this is all coming down here over the next number of hours. Let's look at the latest HRRR model, and starting at Okay, so this is from 2 hours ago. I think this is the latest one we have. It should be, and it is. So here we are at the present time. Again, it's radar presentation. I think I'll go to a tighter view. It's radar presentation. Notice on the northern fringe, it's actually showing rain on there. It's probably more reflection of the lack of intensity than anything else. But once we get through, here's 4 o'clock, and you can see that band of heavy snow kind of pivots in with the low center. We're at 4 o'clock in the morning here, 5 a.m., and that's as far as it goes. Now, in terms of total precip out of this, so certainly another half to 3/4 of an inch between now and 5 a.m. On Thursday. Notice the sharp cutoff, the heavy precip that it shows for Long Island and up into parts of southeastern and south central, south coastal Connecticut on the order of an inch to an inch and a half. And there's probably a couple of more hours to add to that until everything pulls away. So you look, everything is on course. You know, I don't know about those Weather Service numbers, which could certainly continue to remain about 50 to 60% higher than what I have. I feel comfortable leaving my numbers as they are. I don't see any reason to knock them down or raise them again. I guess my concern is the northern and western edge of this, and where is that sharp cutoff to all of this going to be. By the way, we do have coastal flood warnings up for Long Island and New Jersey, as this the northeast fetch from the Atlantic is very long, so we going for hundreds of miles, and that water is being pushed into the coastal areas, so there are going to be high tide problems through this afternoon and into the first part of tonight. Good to see those of you who are able to get on board during the midday. I hope you're enjoying it. Timothy Veltman, yeah, that half to 3/4 of an inch on the HRRR. Remember, we've already seen in a lot of those areas probably a half to 3/4 of an inch. And, some of the snow accumulation is being lost because of the fact that it's falling in the daytime, and with temperatures which are pretty much in the 30 to 32, 33 degree range here. When it snows, when you get into those heavier bands, you're going to bring those temperatures down to 30, 31, or maybe even 30. And yeah, Alcina, I think the ratios will be like 8 to 1, up maybe to 10 to 1 during the overnight. Blacktop, hard to judge, but yeah, blacktop, of course, they salt brine it, so on the roadways. At least with these snowstorms this time of year, at least the good part of this is that during travel times with roadways and blacktop being clear, it does make it easier to get around. Tepe 9076, the big house is staying open. How bad will the 1 a.m. commute be? I think it's going to be difficult tonight over Long Island in terms of getting around. Once it gets past, one of the other things that's happened on Long Island, by the way, from a lot of the reports I've seen, when this started out this morning, there was a period of sleet for a couple of hours, and that put down a little bit of a layer of ice on the ground, very thin, but enough. And that kind of negates the blacktop thing. So if it snows on top of that, it's got the snow has something to cling to. So you have snow-covered roads where normally you would not in a situation like this. And particularly, I said, once we get past 4 o'clock and with the heavier snow for Long Island falling tonight, it's going to be problematic for you if you're getting out of work after midnight. So just bear that in mind in whatever decisions you do make. Oh, Nick Cortez is on. Thanks for hitting the super chat, pal. Joyce Mack, the Jersey Shore got a band of rain, sleet, and therefore only the grass is accumulated. From what I suspect, it's mostly the sleet. Okay, yeah. For now, again, you go. You're gonna pick it up later. The observations showing are fairly impressive to your west, so you should be getting into it before too long. And I'll see. Well, that's that advection, the dry slot that looks like there's a bit of a dry slot coming up from Long Island. Not you surprised. Again, gotta wait till later this afternoon when everything starts to pivot around, and then you get into the precip that's going to be coming in as the low center develops. Just scrolling down, I want to make sure I get a clock in the middle of the map. It's very hard to watch the clock and the map at the same time. I know, that's why I've been trying to call out the times for you guys, because I know it's difficult to have everything, trying to look at 5 different things at the same time. I feel your pain. Slushy snow for Veronica Bazanka. Is meteorologist Phil Bazanka doing his forecast thing, I hope, Veronica? And make sure he knows going out tonight. It's going to be difficult with the snow coming down. Let's see, Barbara Ryan. It will snow heavy and moderate here in Lancaster. You're going to go for you should go into the late afternoon and evening in Lancaster. I'd be curious, Barbara, as to how much snow is on the ground there where you are. Dave Michael, when is the heavy stuff coming into Essex County? Give it some time. It'll be there. Just again. We've seen heavy snow in and around New York City. It's been continues to show on the radars as we showed you earlier, central South Jersey and also back up into most of eastern Pennsylvania. It will pivot around later this afternoon, and I know Veronica that he is not a happy camper. I understand. James Harris, when is the next meetup? Okay, I actually do have a library appearance coming up in Deer Park on Sunday, I want to say April 8th. Is that what it is on the calendar? But let me get back to you on that. I gotta get the specifics here as far as that is concerned. 8 inches on the ground in Harrisburg since 5 or 6 a.m. Wow, doing very well over there in south central and southeastern PA. A lot of that area has been sitting in a snow hole for a good part of the winter, and York has 6 to 8 inches. Good to see you on here, Eric P. How is my colleague, Dio Nankumar wants to know, Brittany Bohr? She is doing her thing on TV right now, so wasn't able to get her on for this at the moment. Let's see. Iron Mine 10, Manhattan. Again, very surprising as to how much snow is actually accumulated in the warmer urban areas, and because a band of heavy snow just basically set up right over New York City. James Vitale later this afternoon, and for a good chunk of the overnight. That's when it gets into the coastal counties. If you're east of the Parkway, you got to wait for that western area to pivot around and move eastward. And Robert Hurley, yes, the average temperature right now, I was looking at this yesterday in New York City, the average temperature right now the average high should be about 51. So it shows you how far off we are as far as temperatures are concerned. It also shows you, by the way, that you have to be almost 20 degrees below average in order to produce a snowstorm this time of year. That is a very, very formidable anomaly that you have to get. It's not often that you see anomalies stretched out to 20 degrees below average, but indeed this is what we have now. David Schwartz gets to go home early. Good for him. No snow accumulation in Shirley. No, Nick, and not until after 3 or 4 o'clock for Long Island. James Vitale, as far as the snow is concerned, I'll bring my map up again. For those of you who maybe have joined late, here is my forecast map. Again, let me stress that it's not going to be perfect. There are going to be some hits along the way as far as getting it as forecast, and there are going to be areas that are going to be too low, and there are going to be areas that are too high. I think the risk for areas that are going to be too low might be coastal New Jersey, and also for Long Island, and probably even for New York City. I may have to take that 6 to 8 area and get rid of it and make it all 8 to 12. The other area where it could turn out too high is going to be as you go north and west. That sharp cutoff that I have there in northeastern Pennsylvania, I might have to pull that southeastward if the bands don't make it back up into northwestern New Jersey. And this has been, we've been indicating this issue all along with regards to this. And the 12-inch band that I have drawn in looks like that's going to work out fairly well. One of the things as a forecaster, you try, believe me, we all try to get it as right as we can, and it's a very, if one thing, you know, if one thing has come across through all these nor'easters and all the snows that we've had this winter, that it is an incredibly daunting task to do that. Okay, incredibly daunting and impossible. You can never draw an accumulation map perfectly. It's going to bust for somebody somewhere, and I think as far as how you perceive all of this, you know, when you are absorbing all this information, you have to remember that that there's always that possibility that that's going to happen, that it could bust on either side. It's rare indeed when, you know, you get a situation where you get it as almost perfectly. Someone is always going to wind up being on the short end of the stick and on the long end of the stick. Timothy Parrish, I have not looked at all in the long range because I follow my policy, which is basically when there's a storm going on, I stay front and center. The Weather Service for New Haven for 16. Carl Weiss. I have 8 to 12. Okay, for that part of Connecticut. You know, that back edge, the western side of the low, when the heavy snow pivots in and the bands come in from off the ocean, you know, that's when it will put down. You'll put that down. The accumulating amounts. Are you going to get to the high end? I don't know. You know, at this point, the way I've actually didn't really look too much at weather models when we're at this point of a system. But when it's actually underway, it's basically satellite radar and surface observations, and that is pretty much what you look at. Thomas Giovanello, 2 inches in central Nassau. Okay, yeah, again, after 3 or 4 o'clock, it's going to be Long Island's turn, and Long Island and Connecticut, particularly coastal Connecticut. As you guys start to go up toward Route 84, it's going to cut off somewhat. But, you know, south of 15 and going east on 95, this is going to be the prime time. After 3 o'clock, you'll start to see you know, your snow's accumulating on all surfaces. All right, folks, we're going to put an end to it right here. We'll be back probably later this evening. We'll get Joe Rayo on here, and we'll do another Joe and Joe show, which you guys have been telling me you absolutely enjoy, and I really appreciate that. Nick Cortez, Nassau and Suffolk may wind up getting pretty much even snowfall with this, so everybody may get into that 8 to 12 range. As I said, I may have to, redo that a little bit later today. Once I get a good confidence as to how the bands are setting up and what kind of surface observations we're dealing with, I can make some adjustments. You know, and then after that, tomorrow we'll do a post-mortem and we'll see where we did well and maybe where we did not so well. And hopefully this is the last one, because I have to tell you, folks, I am tired. Okay, so there's more if you want more on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Cioffi, and of course on my websites, meteorologistjoecioffi.com. Angry Ben is taking care of New York City. If you're New York City bound or you are in New York City, nycweathernow.com for all your latest weather information. And if you join late, the video is up there for you to replay, and I'll post a link on my Facebook page so you can access this in a couple of minutes once YouTube does its thing and uploads everything. All right, have a great afternoon. Be safe out there. We will talk to you guys sometime this evening.